morning, good afternoon, good evening across the world. I stole that straight from coast to coast, dude. Oh man, I had to, man. Art Bell and George Nori. Hello, everybody. Today is Friday, the 10th of April. I'm here today with my second collaboration with a friend of the show here, Into the Mist. You could follow him at Into the Mist 13. Please do on X. Please do also follow me at MNFBY Pod at on X, and obviously here on the YouTubes. If you can give me a sub, throw in some comments and a like, that'd be very appreciated. For today, we are actually talking about something we kind of hinted at last week that was one of the primary topics in regards to the battlefield for children and the obscurity that it lies behind, and how a lot of us don't have much awareness to what our children are exposed to, whether it comes to the internet or like we've heard about these things that are happening with Roblox, I believe with Schlep, who's been doing a lot of exposure there. And so today I brought Myst on to dedicate possibly a two-part series on this topic. It's a lot to talk about, and we don't want to inundate giving anyone, given how how serious of a topic this is, and how honestly how scary it can be, especially if you're a parent, you're an aunt, you're an uncle, a grandparent. It could be a little terrifying, but that's not our point here. We're not here to terrify. Myst is here to inform and actually show you that there are tools that are available to you, and knowledge that can help you prevent these kinds of things happening to our loved ones. And without speaking any more, I'm going to go ahead and give it to Myst here to give us an intro. Welcome, brother. Give us a little
Hey,
bite.
yeah, thanks. That was a great introduction. And I think it was really important that you kind of mentioned, you know, sorry, I had to run and let my dog in. um,
It's all good, man.
uh, I think it was important how you mentioned that this is, obviously a very deep subject. It's kind of hard, but I'm not going to go into graphic detail about any sort of crimes. We're not going to go down that route because, like you said, I don't want to sow fear. I would like to sow understanding. I think that the more knowledgeable a parent or adult or guardian is about the landscape that we face, the less fear that they have. Right? You kind of fear the unknown, and being able to understand and protect yourself, and kind of like start thinking about the ways to protect your kid, rather than it be this kind of like what I call Peter Panic. I don't want everyone to Peter Panic. I would rather give you details, and because it's like I've tried every road. Talking to people, it's like, and sometimes you don't speak well, but sometimes it's like you try fears, sometimes you try, getting upset, and it's, sometimes you just get upset. I should say, not try getting upset, but I really have found that one of the best ways is obviously empowerment, and that's what knowledge really is. And I think that, speaking to people, our age or older who have kids, some of us, up until a certain age, we're kind of born around computers, and sort of kind of think that we understand what's going on with the devices in front of us. And but I think that there's a lot of hidden layers that we don't understand because we're just average computer users, a lot of us. And then I think that there's people out there, obviously, who don't understand what's going on the digital frontier at all. And so that's kind of where I want to gear this. So the internet obviously has connected the world in ways that people have never imagined. It has removed barriers that once helped us protect the most vulnerable among us. Like, it's no longer that people have to be parked outside of a school in a van anymore. They can make contact with children all over the world. And so it really kind of reduces barriers, and it also reduces effort on a predator's part. They can kind of like message a lot of people at once. And so if we're going to move forward responsibly, we have to understand how this environment has changed and what it means for our children that are growing up inside of it. So the kind of like today we'll be talking about digital defense for child trafficking, or kind of like what is going on the digital frontier. Because we can go into, in part two or something about real life trafficking. But
Yeah.
my predominant kind of like area of expertise myself has been, finding these people on Twitter, studying these criminals on Twitter. So I think, and in Discord and the digital landscape, Roblox and stuff like that, they all kind of use different tools in their toolkit to steal your kids away. But the internet did not just expand access to information, expanded access to people. And that obviously is a really positive thing. I've met some of my best friends, a lot of our group, all digital friends. But then it comes with with the other side, which is harm. You can run into all of these bad actors out there. And so the same systems that allow learning, communication, and growth also create openings that can be exploited if we are not paying attention. So I think this is kind of where the first step comes in, is that no matter what skill level you are digitally, I think that one of the things most often forgotten is the scale, how big the internet is. There's something like there's 8 billion people on the planet, and there's like 5 billion of them online. And who knows, like how many people are actually interacting on places like Twitter or Discord or in these video games. It's just so many people. So communication is instant, global, and one of the bad parts is anonymous. You never know who you're talking to on the other end of the line. So this changes the nature of risk. This is no longer about isolated incidents. It is about systems operating at a level where harmful behavior can occur frequently and quietly and blatantly. I mean, like it's quiet, but it's like once you see it, you're
Absolutely.
like, oh my God, it's everywhere. Um, so uh, you know, I think we could kind of start this big digital scale discussion. We can take it down to, obviously, how does it affect parents? How does it affect the kid? And so how does it all start? And it really starts with somebody befriending your kid. It doesn't always start with force. It's not like your child is immediately exposed to a harmful situation, because obviously then their alarm bells would go off, and they would, flee, whether that's leave the chat room or tell you, call mom, this guy's being weird. Whatever it happens to be, it really begins with the development of trust, developing rapport. And that's why they call it grooming, because it's a gradual process built on manipulation, attention, and feigned emotional connection. Predators kind of mirror kids. They speak like them, they play the video games that they do. A predator might not try to interact with your kid, like, say, for an example, in Roblox or something like that. They might not make some sort of quote unquote attempt to DM them until they've played like 5 or 10 games over the course of time. They can just kind of sit and mirror and create this rapport. And it often feels harmless at first. Kids don't realize that, this person's eventually getting kind of like closer. And I think that understanding that it's kind of slow and not very blatant and that there are kind of these psychological tricks is key to recognizing it early and preventing it. And obviously that comes through talking to your child, preparing them to understand what a predator looks like. If you think about being some sort of herd of animals and you're in some sort of Sahara, the lion doesn't just run out in full view and charge the pack, the herd head on. it stalks through the grass and seems very innocuous and or unintimidating or unnoticed, and slowly moves closer and closer and doesn't alert panic sensors, doesn't alert flight or flight until it's too late. So teaching our kids to understand, like, oh, this is the signs of somebody that's moving closer to me to try to manipulate me. And so one of those things is understanding how predators use manipulation, language, and psychological leverage. This is probably the most critical part of all of this, because you can find, you can stop your kid from, interacting on the internet. You can remove all the devices from your house and ground them and all sorts of things. But what's a lot harder to remove is the psychological effects that these groomers put in place. So it's how communication itself is used as a tool. In many cases, manipulation is not obvious or aggressive. It is subtle, gradual, and psychological. Predators often use patterns of language that build trust, create emotional dependence, and slowly shift a child's perception of reality. This can include things like mirroring interests, offering validation, or positioning themselves as the only person who understands the child, and creating a sense of secrecy. That is pretty much the playbook for grooming. It just happens
Right.
in a longer scale. Um,
Yeah,
so
Miss,
I'll
like maybe we can
go ahead.
so like as far as like what the typical progression of this, this type of behavior is it fair to like say that it's essentially like you were saying, like it's kids, they're playing Roblox, and like you said, some sicko starts befriending a child, then where does it typically move? What platforms do they normally, once they've essentially uh, entrap the child into a false sense of friendship? Do they take them to Discord? Do you happen to have like any context there of like what are the typical platforms where they've basically pulled the child out of the gaming environment, if you will, right? And then they want to have like I'm trying to be sensitive in how I phrase this, right? But like they want to have more one-on-one interaction. What could do you have like any context that you could
Yeah.
provide on that?
Totally. And that's a really, really good question, because it does kind of occur like that. You could view and I'm sorry to use these terms, right? But we are speaking about predators. So this is kind of like they go to the watering holes, right? Your Roblox, your places where you can run into kids playing games, right? And so there is the progression, right? Because you do slowly want it to become more exclusive, I guess you could say, would, without using the terms that the predators want to use. They obviously want to isolate the child and create what the predator is trying to do. And I'm so sorry to everyone who has to listen to this, but the predator wants it to be more intimate with your child, and that's a
Right.
terrible thing to say. I hate that those words come out of my
It
mouth,
has to be said though, brother. It has to,
but that's
yeah, it has to be said.
yeah.
Unfortunately, right? We've said that this is going to be a hard one, and we apologize to anyone that listens, but you just bear with us because this is knowledge. Knowledge is power here. Sorry to
Yeah.
interrupt you. Continue from there, man.
No, no, thank you. Yeah. And I think that that's a good point. Like, to the predator, this is seduction. And this is disgusting, because seduction, obviously, to the rest of us, is what happens between two consenting adults trying to find each other and, have joy. This is a very gross, literal perversion of, seduction, and that this is what the predators are using, is seduction tactics on your child, and psychologically so. So you do, so the predator is going to these watering holes where your child is, out there, right, and less monitored, out in the field a little bit while the parents are out grazing, so to speak, right? Doing whatever, work, whatever, in the other room, what doesn't matter. Even if you're attentive, the predators still look for the moments when your child is away. So then, of course, they want to generate rapport, because uh, there is this, like, they do understand that there's fight or flights in children, that kids do know when adults are being weird. Kids are smart. They do kind of understand. And if you're too forward or too weird, kids obviously gonna be like, ew, gross, like, go away. Um, so it usually starts with the conversation, like, it's like, oh cool, well, do you want to come and see how to find this super secret sword that you've never, oh, let me come with me, I'll show you this thing, and you take them on this some sort of digital adventure, and you get them this reward, and then you're like, oh wow, and during that time you're kind of like just talking to them, right? And this person is obviously trying to find out, how old are you, what's your name, like, are your parents around? And they ask these things in ways that aren't just like, they wait until slip it in, like, you know until they have a little bit of rapport. They're
Right.
predators, right? And eventually, of course, the questions are going to come out. It's like, oh well, what other methods of communication do you have? Like, we've got this fun little group on Discord where we talk about how to find all the secret places in, Roblox or something like that, right? They're trying to get more time with your kid, because you're obviously, your kid's going to turn off Roblox and not play it, but then could pick up the tablet and still be talking to them on Discord or Telegram. And which is why, first of all, I really don't let your kids have Discord. Don't let your kids have
Well, if your
Roblox.
kids
Don't,
play Roblox, right? Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
or Roblox, like, at all. Like, or if they do, like, be there, and I know that's not
I mean,
always
let them
easy.
play single player games, man. Like when I grew up, me, but we both grew up in like, I don't know if I'm that much older than you, but like we grew up playing. Like first thing I was playing was Duck Hunt. Holy crap, and then like
Yeah,
single player games, and then
Morrowind,
maybe what's
Legend of
that?
Zelda, like
Heck
Morrowind and Legend of Zelda. And
yes,
you
Oblivion.
didn't have to be in this big integrated world. I think Halo was
Right.
one of the first ones that did that.
Yeah,
But
but even Halo at that time was like LAN parties. Like, your three friends would come over with their Xboxes,
and
and you'd have
pizza.
like at the safety of your families that confided in each other, trusted each other to allow their kids to go spend the night elsewhere. It was just different. Like there was that protection factor. There was that vetting that happened, right? But then when we
Yeah.
get into the digital space, the control the parent has for that vetting process is all but gone. I mean, it's literally gone. I mean, so in my opinion, and my opinion is just my own, but like I wouldn't let children play anything but single player games. I mean, heck, my my nephew, I'll just say, I bought him like a well, his family's not wasn't doing very well at the time, so I gave him my Nintendo Switch with all my games. I gave him everything, right? But I locked the
Lucky.
console. Yeah, he's super lucky. His mom was not happy with me for doing that. She's like, "You just 10 up to me, and I hate you." But but I mean, like, I wanted him to have that, but like I put parental settings on there. It's password locked. His mom doesn't know the password. Only I do. And I deleted everything off the hard drive on it and the SD card that was even like M rated or like even had any blood or anything. And I made sure that she does not ever allow him to get on the Wi-Fi. Right. So like it's not my kid, but it's my nephew. But like, you love your family. So I'm
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that out there as like, a potential, alternative. Like show your kids they don't need to be on freaking Fortnite, and they can, if they want to play a game, when you allow them to play, like they got good grades, maybe you have the control to allow, you have the control of their exposure, right?
Yeah.
And like if you buy your kid Grand Theft Auto 5 to go on GTA Online, I mean, and your kid is 6 years old, you should probably research what GTA Online is, before you give a child a game where you can shoot cops, everyone's throwing profanity. It's a
Who
game of
knows who you're
crime.
going to run into?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Sorry, I want to throw that
No,
in there because I mean, it's not that I'm a gamer, right? So I got to defend gaming, but at the same time, I get it. Like there, there's ways that if a kid has like a hobby or a passion for video games, maybe that's what they want to grow up and do. You don't want to like block them from that,
for sure.
but at the same time, like you have the power, and there's so many options out there. There's a lot of tools where you can show your child that they don't need to play those online games. There's single player games, and when they're of an older age, sure, maybe you can kind of allow them over time once they get into their teenage years or their early teenage years, and go on Fortnite or whatever they're playing, Call of Duty. I don't know what they play. I don't play multiplayer, but yeah.
Yeah. Or be there with them. If you're going to do those kind of things, like do it, be in the room with them. And like, because, and don't let them have headphones on for the people that they're talking to in the game, like, and I think, like you said, it's like really also it's learning how to talk to your kids about these things in ways that you're like, look, also, these are experiences that you could run into online. These are digital predators. These are, there are things out there that are dangerous for you, and that could be, a whole episode on its own. And I'm maybe the less of one to kind of talk about that because I don't have kids. It's all theory about how to talk, but I
Yeah,
do
me neither.
have people who would love, like BX has a kid, and so she knows how to, like there's people who do and have also can have those conversations that maybe we could have help out with that because some people just don't take it seriously. But there are ways to just talk to your child and be like, look, there are dangerous people out there, and like prepping them, and then being in the room and just not letting them have free range to the internet is huge, right? It's prepping the communication, which is kind of what it all kind of comes back to, right? Because the predator is trying to communicate with your child, and you need to have, buffered your kid with communication to be prepared for those attempts at communication, because the predators do have a routine, whether they're conscious about it, like whether they're like, out there writing down their methodologies, or whether they just do what they know works because humans are creatures of habit, and kind of like stimuli tested it, so to speak, where they're just like, oh, this has worked, and so I'm going to do it again. Or the calculated ones out there, which also exist, that do create these patterns to steal your child, And so one way to kind of understand this more clearly is through basic human needs, like Maslow's needs. Children, like all people, are driven by needs, and maybe more so as children, about belonging, validation, safety, and identity. And if a predator comes and can kind of identify where, if your child is lacking in some sort of need, especially if it's like, so Maslow's needs, obviously food, water, shelter, and then you have belonging, social acceptance, and self-esteem. I might be paraphrasing a little bit in there, but basically there's kind of like, and that's how you can become a fulfilled human, is by going through those five kind of stages. And if, a human, especially a child, is lacking on something like food or water, obviously it's very easy for a predator to come in there and take it. That would be obviously a more real in-life predator. We're talking about kind of more, because your kid has some sort of device and is online. So we're assuming that, we've got to kind of go from more into psychological needs, which would, like I said, would be belonging, validation, safety, identity, self-esteem, kind of ties into that. And it's really easy for a predator to kind of learn what a kid is talking about, and just by listening to a kid complain about what's going on and just keep them kind of talking, what is lacking in their life, and then a predator mirrors their language to feign that they are what the child is lacking in those points, whether, if it's self-esteem, or attention, then the predator is willing to compliment them and tell them things like, oh my gosh, you're so smart for your age. Oh my God, I've never, wow, you're so misunderstood. Think disgusting things to be saying to a child, but that's what these people do. They're looking to fill the voids. And if your child, everybody has a lacking. Nobody out there is fully complete, especially, as a young teen or teenager, right? Your psychological, your mind's all over the place, your hormones are all over the place, you're growing up, who knows what's going on in your head. You're so already in personal turmoil, even if you have a very stable life, that these people can come in and just manipulate your mind and steal these things. And so when those needs are not met, or in a state of tension, they become points of vulnerability, and a manipulator identifies those gaps and fills them, and if, for example, if a child feels misunderstood, the manipulator understands them. I kind of think you get the idea. And so over time, and obviously, there's always that kind of like thing that the predator will say to a child, something like, oh, you're the only one that kind of like gets me too. You're the only one that
Jesus,
you
dude.
you're the only one that sees me. You're the only, wow, I can't believe that I'm opening up to you like this. Like, you're so young, I can't imagine this. And I'm sorry to say this, but these are patterns that you see out there, these people using these things. Even you can see them blatantly on Twitter, and it's like
It's
disgusting.
insane though. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, like even myself, I'm like listening to. I can't like I have a hard time fathoming this happens. Like I know it happens. I'm not blind to it,
yeah,
but like, I know how much you've researched this and how much you care, man. And like, but like this is the first time that even you and me have talked to this level on this topic, like with you like really breaking it down. So like, not only for the audience,
yeah.
this is like the first time for myself. Outside of the many spaces you've been on, I don't know if I could shout out the ones you've been on, so I'll refrain.
Sure. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like you've been on Shepherd's Watch, you've co-hosted there. You're doing everything you can on this front, and that's why one of the main reasons I admire you so much, man.
Well,
Um,
thank you.
but hearing you talk about like the pathos of these creatures, I can't even call them human beings, man. It makes me sick. Like to know that there are people out there that this is what they live for. And it gets more heinous than that, right? Myst. It's not only
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
grooming for like grooming in like a seductive manner. It's
It's
also
not
like,
just for a predator's romantic interests. It also can get
and sometimes
way.
it's like satanic, like
Yeah.
for self harm or harm to others, right, man?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
just I'm
We're
not trying to
talking.
take you
No,
off a tangent, man. I'm sorry.
no, 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 please. And it's fine because it all does kind of tie in together. And yeah, absolutely. It's not all just, gosh, I freaking hate to say this. It's not all just the person wanting to be, you know, to be to rape it or sexually assault your child digitally or even physically, but there
We'll
all
say
are also, when it
for
gets into
YouTube,
that.
we'll say R and SA.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. RNSA, like, and they so they it does get a lot darker where there's the people out there who have much more harmful intent, but it all kind of starts at the same pattern, like you said, the pathos of these people, and kind of the logos and the ethos of them, how they it and it, I hate this part, but to them this is seduction. This is like you or me going out to the bar and trying to find an adult woman our age and talking to them. They are trying to seduce your child, and it's really gross, because also then they tie in the fact where they're trying to get your child to break up with you. And I'm sorry to refer to these things in kind of like this sense, but so the psychological grooming and all that kind of stuff of this, the rapport building and the manipulation and the melding, it's all leading up to the point at which it's like, it's nobody else will understand us, like, you're the only one that gets me, I'm the only one that gets you. Oh my gosh, when your parent finds out, of course they're going to flip out and they don't understand you, and they're really trying to drive a wedge also between the kid and you, which is of course what abusers do, because they want to isolate the victim away from protection. And the really insidious part about this is they are psychologically destroying you in your kid's mind, so that your kid is more likely to run into their arms than yours. And like, that is one of the hardest parts about all of this to me, is like they are grooming people's children away from them for terrible purposes, for R and SA purposes. Like, they are really like, and the thing is like, again, not every single predator has a playbook out there, right? They're not all out there reading some manual. But the problem with the internet is that there are like these groups and forums out there of people that all meet up and trade this CSAM content. And you know how they do it, and you know what they did. They like you and I log in online to talk to each other about our lives and stuff, you know, Iran and all these other things, and they
Yeah.
log in to talk about generating more CSAM, child sexual abuse material, you know. And so there
Mm.
are, you know, not every one of them has like this such a, you know, brilliant understanding of what they're doing about how they, you know, steal your child, but they do just follow kind of like the playbook. And um it's so, you know, really, I know I've used some specific terms and stuff like that, but uh I to
Yeah,
kind of
like
like
sensitive
encapsulate.
terms for the sake of like unfortunate. I need to get, I'm gonna have to set up a Rumble too, because
Yeah,
we'll just like
yeah,
codify some stuff, because we're just gonna get buried
yeah, and
under it.
we don't want to cause any sort of harm, and I'll make sure to use the acronyms for sure. But like we've talked about some like direct things that these people could say, but
Yeah.
it's like the important part is not necessarily the exact terminology, but it's more
Mhm.
like these kind of like templates that these creatures are sticking to.
Yeah, like
They
a
really
playbook,
are.
right?
Yeah, it's patterns, and so those are the kind of things also that parents need to discuss with their children, that, you know, it is suspicious if some adult online is kind of following this playbook of trying to be like, oh, I'm cool. Oh, you know, I logged in last week and I'll see you next week. And then, oh, I'll see you tomorrow. And then, you know, and then the kid's like, okay, well, mom and dad have already talked to me and they said that it's weird if someone does this. So now I see it as weird as someone doing this, which cuts the problem off because, again, you know, we're not always going to be able to be there with our kids on their devices. They're going to be over at friends' houses. They're going to be growing up to be their own teenagers and adults. We're not always going to, you know, we're not raising our kids to be kids. We're raising them to handle these dangers themselves as they grow. Um, so I think that, you know, like we to kind of like move past this sort of really heavy psychological part about it. I think that another aspect is that parents assume that these devices, that these platforms, these apps and games and things like that are built with security in mind, and they're not really always built with security in mind. And it seems to be that the pattern of behavior is that they're also most likely not built with your child's safety in mind, like at all. Like um you know, so the first thing to think about these platforms is they want to maximize engagement. They get more, you know, your attention means everything to them. Your time and attention means everything to them. So the more time that they can get you to spend online by connecting you to more people in that ecosystem that they've developed, the better it is for them, the app. So they're obviously very good at trying to connect people and keep their attention. They are doing it for monetary purposes, right? I'm not trying to condemn anybody for trying to get you to spend your time on their video game or whatever. That's obviously a very natural incentive for capitalism or whatever, but there is that dark side of it where your kid is now going to be spending a lot of time in these ecosystems that are designed for them to connect with people. So that obviously creates a gap where bad actors can operate. It's not always that the platform is trying to get your kid to interact with, you know, predators, but it's just that their systems are built like that. And then you have to factor in kind of like the idea about some of them, like Roblox, where it seems that they really just don't care about your child safety. That they, you know, they put these kind of like pretend guardrails up that sort of make the average computer user feel like they're being safe, because they're like, well, I turned on parental controls on Roblox and I banned, you know, the top 20 rooms that they're not supposed to go into, or whatever, you know, or I stopped outside communication, so I did good enough. My kid can play Roblox, I can do whatever I want in the other room. But, we've gotten reports of hackers breaking through parental controls and breaking into kids' rooms and talking to kids in a scenario where luckily the kid knew that this was not normal and went and told their mom. And the mom came and told us because she was part of the community and she wanted us to know. So that, she had put up all the parental blocks and all these things and somehow this bad actor had gotten into her kid's room digitally somehow still, right? So it's not even that the parental controls are complete. They're often very lacking, and um, I think that that is something to be aware of as a parent as we go forward. That
Right.
not to be lulled into a false sense of security because something is mass produced, such as a video game or an app. That it is very easy to fall through the cracks, and that for me, one of the biggest shockers as I went through cybersecurity school and learned more about hacking and things like that. I always figured that I was going to use those skills, and be some sort of SOC analyst during the day, and at night I would go and try to find the dark web, and master the dark web and the onion network and stuff like that. And I'd have to be finding them, and how am I going to find them using these different search engines or whatever. And I always thought it was going to be a lot more technologically intensive, and then I found him on Twitter. I found the entire cesspool on Twitter. So it was like I thought I was
What's
going
the
to have to
name of
go.
that one network that's like huge that like they've made a resurgence? That was on the space we were on recently that BX was talking about. What was that one called? It was like it's three numbers. I'm sorry, I
The
don't.
764 network.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, like huge networks, and they all operate in kind of like plain view. Like I was thinking that I was going to have to go and search and go into these very convoluted dark corners of the internet where you have to have all these technical skills to get to. And really it was like the most blatant and worst stuff was happening in plain view on Discord, on Roblox, on Twitter, or now X, and in kind of like plain TikTok. Oh my god, TikTok is another one that's just like allows so much access. um but so I think that that's another thing to be aware of, because parents assume that these things are in the open, so it's not going to be there, and these predators have learned how to operate blatantly in front of the masses in law, in Discord, Roblox, Twitter. They learn how to do that. So I think that's really kind of a something for parents to consider as well. um Obviously. Oh yeah, please go ahead.
So like I know you were talking about like did you cover your like blind spots of like was that what we're talking about with the came to like the parental settings and features like
Yeah.
anything? Okay, cool.
Yeah, and then kind of visibility and misconceptions. um so we could I could yeah, let's so obviously I think that we've kind of covered a lot actually in this small amount of time.
Yeah,
This
this
is
one's a heavy one, man. I was gonna say maybe we go over. I know we have about like three or four other topics we want to go through, and we also everybody we do want to, Mist is going to be providing solutions, suggestions, and obviously forward thinking, like the positive side of this too, which is the
yeah.
empowerment and the tools that you can have. But I think maybe yeah, brother. Maybe we like we stop here with like the platforms and the blind spots because you know when I mean like even for myself like and it's not you obviously
No, it's
it's
I
just
think this
like
is a great time to stop, to be
it's
honest.
just
I
like
kind of felt it.
yeah it's just like it like on a spiritual level like
It's hard.
it, it makes me want to like it makes me very angry
Yeah.
because I don't know. I'm a very naive person. Um, I admit that. I'm open about that. I just because I can't. It's hard for me to comprehend. There's this kind of evil, man. Like these are children, dude. And like,
Yeah.
I'm not trying to bring up like the Epstein stuff, but just for context, I'll just mention that because it's just like that revelation. I mean, we've all known for since 2006 at least. This has kind of like been kind of aired out into the open on that front. But you know, there isn't enough anger from like
Yeah.
decent people that, and then these freaking demons, they operate in the open, as you said. It's not like they're like you they're not like hiding in the recesses of the dark web. They're on, pardon my language, fucking Roblox.
Yeah.
And they're interacting with your kid while you're cooking them macaroni and cheese. And like I can't wait till there's a day where we can stop it, man. How that will be, I don't know, because evil never rests and evil never, it never sleeps and it's relentless and it will never go away till we get rid of it. But you can argue, when light is cast, shadows are cast too. So they're kind of like interlinked, unfortunately. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I think that just making it harder for them to exist is really kind of the first step. The first step I think is limiting their access to the watering holes, right? Like limiting their access to the places where kids or I'm sorry, limiting their kids access to them, right? Like starting with the parent, teaching the kid like, hey, you're going to be at the watering hole and there's going to be predators in the grass behind you. So just be aware, because the more kids that are prepped and the more parents that are prepped, the harder it is for them to operate, right? The more, and the more eyes are on the situation. Like you said, it does kind of cast shadows where then they have to go into the darker areas. But, as we push them into these smaller and smaller points of confinement, it's easier and easier to find them. And so I think that, really like public sentiment, I was kind of talking about this in that space that the Shepherd's Watch space, or not, I was talking about it with the people of the Shepherd's Watch space.
right, right.
But oh, I lost my train of thought. But like kind of like preparing your oh darn it.
I did it. I'm
It's
sorry.
no, 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 no. My mind, that was a great mind slip moment. But essentially, like prepping your kids, preparing them to that there are predators out there, and that starting that would be the like a huge point before we start running out and prosecuting and getting all of them, is like, let's stop them, all
Right.
of this free reign access to these children. Let's stop them from kind of like we're pulling, by saving a kid at a time, or just locking up a predator at a time. It's kind of like pulling water out of the bucket with an eyedropper, and every person that winds up in jail and every child that winds up safe is a win, and I'm all about that. But there is kind of like this problem of like the faucet is busted and bursting and pouring into the bucket while we're like taking one out at a time. And so if we minimize the flow, the access, and I don't necessarily mean destroying things. Like I don't want to destroy capitalist markets, right? I don't always think that policy and government overreach is, the
But you
correct
vote with your
answer.
dollars.
Yeah.
Like you limit, like, hopefully you'll know like a little bit more if you're hearing this episode. Hopefully you'll know that Roblox isn't good for your kid. Hopefully
Yeah.
you'll learn that Fortnite's not good for your kid. Grand Theft Auto Online's not good. Multiplayer games with anonymous people around the world or they're not good for your kids. So maybe it's that limiting of exposure, like like I was maybe saying, like let them play single player games. Go get Mario, 2-player, 4-player couch co-op. Play with if your kid loves games, clearly you love your child and that's their hobby. Play with them. Go
Yeah.
go 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 get Super Mario Land. I don't know. Donkey Kong World. I don't know.
Yeah.
And expose them to more wholesome things um, that you have control over. Because at the end of the day, it's all a matter of like maintaining that, right, Miss? Like if when you let your child go on these platforms, you relinquish a level of your own, autonomy over like the management of your child, right?
Yeah.
So like I mean, to me, that's a logical start. Just don't let them play this crap. Let them scream and cry and whine, whatever. Be strong, because it's not, tantrums happen and kids get mad. I'm not saying it's easy, but
Yeah.
it's worth it.
It'll be way easier than if a predator gets a hold of them on, even if you catch the predator in a good amount of time, like, even if you catch them while they're still in the messaging phases with your child, and it hasn't advanced to the darker stages like sextortion or any of those other, crimes against child. It's still a lot to deal with a predator just having, access to your kid at all. Like, once they're in, it's kind of like an infestation, and it's like, oh my God, you've got to go get the pesticide. Like, it's best to just not, and like you said, it's not easy to not, for the parents out there whose kids already have things like Roblox or Discord, right? It's not going to be easy to stop your kid from doing it. But like you said, they're like, take it away and don't make it a vacuum, right? Put something else there that, and yeah, your kid's gonna protest against it too much, or sometimes, but like, you're gonna have to navigate your kid protesting things anyway, and putting your foot down for something like the two that I fully 100% say do not let your kid have access to. Well, pretty much I would say the three, like, period, end of story. Like, if your kids don't have these things, don't ever let them have them, and if they do, remove them. Whatever you have to do is TikTok, Roblox, and Discord. And like I get the Roblox one, sort of, but like, do not let your kid have TikTok and Discord. Like, and Discord is the worst
Yeah, it's a
one.
cesspool. I can't stand it.
It is the
Never have.
worst one. There's no protections whatsoever, and there's entire communities and chat servers and people that are trained to drag your kid into these communities, where then it's not even just one predator with your child. You have an entire community of predators with your child, and maybe some of them are hackers, and some of them are scammers, and some of them are, like, child sexual abuse predators. And so then your child is in this den of criminals and terrorists, and then they're hacking your life. It's not always directly like child sexual abuse material. Like, the criminals of the internet all hang out together, or the darkest ones, right? And nobody likes child predators, but child predators can do all things. They're all hackers. They're not all hackers, but the digital ones have a pretty solid understanding of the digital layout, because they've had to learn how to access these places, right? Like, there's not an ad out there that you can just go and type and be like, oh, how do I watch a YouTube video of finding, where do I buy kids online? Like, you don't go to Google and you're like, how do I buy a kid? Like, you have to teach yourself these, like, to find these
Exactly.
secretive areas and how to be safe. And that, like, to a predator, it matters a lot more, their security and stuff like that. And I'm not saying they have perfect security, but it matters more to them than it does to, like, your average parent, because they clearly don't want to get caught, and a parent's just kind of like thinking like, oh well, it's built safe, and like, but they're trained to hide, and they teach your kids how to, if they gain rapport with your kids at a far enough point, then they're going to teach your kid how to digitally hide the predator's existence,
Exactly.
in their devices and stuff. And that's, yeah,
That's what
big.
we're gonna get to, right? We're gonna talk about,
Yeah,
like, exposing the visibility, like, common misconceptions. I know we want to talk about, like, I think you kind of dabbled in it a little bit, and we kind of took the conversation a little further, but, like, we'll talk about, like, long, you want to go about over a couple more subjects.
yeah,
And then we're gonna get to, like, we've kind of, like, talked about a couple things you can do that are preventative, but we'll go deeper into that, because obviously there's always light at the end of the tunnel. Not everything is dark. They want you to believe this world is dark. It's not.
yeah,
It's a lie. The world is good if you choose to see it as such. And so, this does not necessarily have a meta game, macro happy ending, but for on the micro level, for the parent, or the aunt, the uncle, the grandparent, the older nephew, the older cousin, that cares about their younger family member. There are tools available to you, and methods that you can use to ensure, or let's say, dramatically reduce the likelihood of exposure for your kids to this kind of heinous and disgusting satanic activity that's rampant right now, especially here in America, unfortunately. But but yeah, Miss man, thanks for the time on this one. Um, we're gonna do part two next week, right, man? Next Friday.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm so down. And I
Okay.
think that's a really good thing for you to mention at the end here is the hope of it all. Is it may seem overwhelming and you're these predators are adept at being predators, but really it's kind of just like they vanish when you shine the flashlight on them. Like in the horror movies, kind of like you turn on the light and the shadow's gone. And really a lot of these digital predators, their dominance is all digital. I'm not speaking for all of them because obviously there's dangerous people everywhere, but a lot of these digital predators are just that, is that they have their dominance on cyber devices. And in real life, they're not really as, dangerous as you would think. A lot of them can be overweight or children, young ones themselves, or
Like goblins.
yeah, they're not. Yeah, exactly. They're not all, I don't want you to think that they're all, the most powerful creatures on earth. It's just kind of like a bug. It's like a wasp. It's like,
Pennywise. It's like
yeah,
what you have, like like your, your graphic for today. You
yeah,
know, for those that aren't familiar with Pennywise, he feeds on the fear and terror of children. But when the children become brave and no longer have fear, what does he do? He
he
shrivels
becomes
up into
very
nothing.
small. Yeah,
Yeah, and
just a
that's
clown.
exactly what it is, right? I mean,
Yes.
it's a great photo you have there for today. Um, and obviously, man, the Templar warriors, baby, let's go.
Yeah.
Um, so
Or the
yeah, man,
Hashashin, if you will.
the Hashashin, yeah, man, we got to rep the Hashashin for sure. Masyaf, Assassin's Creed 1, let's go.
Let's go.
Um, yeah,
But
man.
yeah, thanks. I think ending on hope is a great thing. And going, parents, if you would like to, there's, OURrescue.org, projectmilkcarton.org, Shepherd's Watch Foundation, .org. Is those are great places to start. Just Google, you if you're unsure, just Google OUR Rescue, Project Milk Carton, and Shepherd's Watch Foundation, and they have also a plethora of tools and articles and stuff for parents, from parents to parents, and tools and things like that. And then of course we'll discuss more of them in the end, because that's it, like you said, we're going to win and we're going to shine bright and the darkness is going to subside and we'll get there. And knowledge is the first step to that kind of power.
Absolutely, man. So, Miss, before we wrap up here, obviously, everybody, make sure you go and you follow Miss at Into the Mist 13 on X. Please, please follow him. Follow him over anyone else. Follow him over me. Mist is involved in some really good stuff right now. Miss, do you have any spaces that you want to that you have scheduled coming up, or is that maybe something we'll talk about next week, or do you have anything in queue that you'd like to shout out to the audience?
I always just shout out on at bx underscore on underscore x. She's, one of my biggest inspirations in starting this fight and has been one of the greatest warriors in the fight. We target different networks of criminals. She focuses on the 764 network, and we haven't even gotten into kind of where the network that I sort of hunt on Twitter and stuff. But be
Cool.
at bx underscore on x. In between each word. I just you gotta follow her for sure. And then there's at SWF stop traffic, and that's traffic like trafficking, not traffic like you're caught in
Traffic
rush hour.
UK, right?
Yeah. And I think that those are just probably some of the two most important people to follow other than you and myself. And I think that's where I'd like to, because they're just great, and the resources out there that are available from just those two people are way there, that gives you a complete protection. If you
Right.
went and just researched through what they have, you would get a complete idea of what's going on, and they provide solutions. And we'll obviously talk about some of those solutions that they provide and that I provide too. So
Yeah, man, excited for that. Yeah, absolutely. Knowledge is power. It always has been, and they try to make sure you don't believe that. That just listen to what they tell you as the truth to be a good little lemming. But we're not lemmings in this audience, so thanks, Mist. I appreciate it, brother. We'll definitely link up and get ready for next week's. Everybody listening today, we will be doing a part 2 on this, and then Mist and me have one other topic we have planned that's going to be very different from this, and it's probably going to involve me cursing and getting upset, and Mist calming me down. Swing back into the political spectrum. But Miss, man, thanks for your time today on this Friday, man. I hope you have a great evening. And
thanks for hosting me and
definitely,
talking about this subject, and thank
absolutely.
you, audience, for listening for sure. It's not easy to do these things, and so I appreciate, kind of getting down in the trenches with you a little bit and talking about the harder stuff. And thanks for being brave and doing it. The more I think that's the way the world's turning, right? These conversations are what change everything, and the more people that are having these, the better.
It has to be done. Nothing will change unless we do something. So absolutely, brother. All right, man. You have a good night. Thank you again
Cool.
for your time, and I'll chat with you soon.
Thanks.
All right. Good night.
Peace.
Thanks, everyone.